Racist appraiser devalues black man's home. What happens next will shock you. Darius Walker had worked too hard for too long to let anyone take away what he had built. From his first job as a busboy at a local diner to his current role as an accomplished software engineer, every dollar he had earned was a testament to his perseverance. And now, standing in the sun-drenched driveway of his beautifully renovated home, he felt nothing but pride. Nestled in an affluent neighborhood of Atlanta, the house was a dream come true, a 3,200-square-foot colonial with a wraparound porch, large bay windows, and a backyard that stretched far enough for his two kids to play freely. He and his wife, Naomi, had put everything into this house. Over the years, they had refinished the floors, updated the kitchen with marble countertops, and carefully curated every detail to reflect the warmth of their growing family. But that pride turned to frustration when he read the email that arrived that morning. The appraisal report had come back, nearly $150,000 lower than what he had expected. His jaw tightened as he scanned the document again, disbelief and anger warring in his chest. The appraiser, a man named Richard Calloway, had devalued his home, citing vague concerns about market appeal and neighborhood desirability. Darius couldn't believe it. He had done his research. Homes in his neighborhood, with the same square footage and features, were selling for significantly higher. His neighbor, a white man named Greg Thompson, had recently sold his home for well above the price the appraiser had set for Darius's. And their houses were nearly identical. Naomi, who was usually the calm one, sat across from him at the dining table, gripping her coffee mug tightly. "This isn't right," she said, shaking her head. "It doesn't make sense. We've put too much into this house. And for what? To be told it's not worth what it actually is." Darius exhaled slowly, forcing himself to stay composed. "You know exactly why this happened?" Naomi's eyes flashed with understanding. "Because we're black." Neither of them wanted to believe it, but the numbers didn't lie. The statistics didn't lie. Across the country, black homeowners were consistently undervalued compared to their white counterparts, their homes appraised for significantly less even in similar markets. But knowing it and experiencing it firsthand were two different things. "I'm not letting this slide," Darius said, setting the report down with finality. "I'm getting a second appraisal. And if they do the same thing, I'm going to make sure people hear about this." Naomi nodded, her expression firm. "We're not backing down." Little did they know, this fight would become bigger than they had ever imagined. Darius Walker was a man of logic and reason. He had spent years coding complex software, solving problems through patience and intelligence. But as he sat at the dining table, staring at the appraiser's report, he felt an unfamiliar fury rising in his chest. Logic and reason had no place in a system rigged against him. The next morning, Darius took the first step toward justice. He contacted his real estate agent, Amanda Green, a sharp-witted woman with a decade of experience in the Atlanta housing market. She listened carefully as he laid out the discrepancies between his home's appraisal and those of his white neighbors. "I'm not surprised," Amanda admitted. "It happens more than people think. The appraisal industry has a lot of unconscious bias, or in some cases, very conscious bias." "I need another appraisal," Darius said firmly. "And I need someone unbiased." Amanda sighed. "I can help with that. But Darius, you should know, challenging an appraisal is an uphill battle. Even if we get a second opinion, the banks might still go with the lower number." Darius clenched his jaw. "Then we'll fight harder." Amanda arranged for another appraiser, a woman named Rachel Kim. She was known for her fairness and diligence, and when she arrived at Darius's home, she took her time, measuring every corner, examining the renovations, and meticulously comparing the property to others in the area. 3 days later, her report came back. $585,000. Darius's hands trembled as he held the document. It was almost $160,000 higher than Richard Calloway's valuation. "This proves it," Naomi said, pacing the living room. "It's discrimination. He deliberately undervalued our home." Amanda agreed. "You have a case, but proving intent is difficult. Are you willing to go public with this?" Darius looked at Naomi, who gave a determined nod. "We have to." Not just for us, but for every Black homeowner this has happened to. Darius and Naomi reached out to a local investigative journalist, Lisa Carter. She had covered stories of racial discrimination before and immediately saw the significance of their case. This isn't just about one appraisal, Lisa told them. This is systemic. If we do this, you need to be ready for backlash. We're ready, Naomi said. Lisa published an article exposing how Black homeowners across the country faced devaluation, using Darius's case as a prime example. The piece went viral within hours. News stations picked up the story, and social media exploded with outrage. Then the threat started. Darius received an anonymous email, "Drop this now, or you'll regret it." Naomi's car tires were slashed in their driveway. Someone spray-painted "liar" across their mailbox. When Darius reported the threats, the police were dismissive. "Could just be kids messing around," the officer said. "No real crime here." Frustrated but undeterred, Darius pressed forward. A civil rights attorney, Marcus Holloway, contacted them, offering to help file a formal complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. "This won't be easy," Marcus warned. "You're going up against institutions that have protected this kind of discrimination for decades. But if you win, it could set a precedent." Darius and Naomi agreed. The legal battle began. As the lawsuit gained traction, a surprising ally emerged: Greg Thompson, their white neighbor who had sold his house for a much higher price. "I had no idea this was happening," Greg admitted when he visited Darius one evening. "I compare my old appraisal report to yours. There's no way they can justify the difference. I want to help." Greg provided documents proving that homes in their area were consistently appraised higher, unless the owner was Black. Then the biggest shock of all. A whistleblower, an appraiser who used to work under Richard Calloway, came forward. Calloway has a pattern, the whistleblower, Daniel Porter, revealed in a recorded statement. He routinely undervalues Black-owned homes. He claims it's market conditions, but we all know what it really is. Darius felt a surge of hope. They finally had hard evidence. With Greg's testimony and Daniel's insider knowledge, the case against Calloway and the appraisal company strengthened. But the opposition fought back hard. Their lawyers argued that market fluctuations and subjective assessments were part of the appraisal process. Then, the bank that had hired Calloway refused to use the second appraisal, insisting they would only acknowledge the original value. It was clear they weren't just fighting Calloway. They were up against an entire system that wanted to keep Black homeowners at a disadvantage. But Darius and Naomi had come too far to turn back now. As the court date approached, the media frenzy grew. Protests erupted outside the appraisal company's office. Politicians took notice, and activists called for major reforms in housing policies. Then, the bombshell. Calloway was caught on a recording making racist remarks about Black homeowners. It was undeniable proof of his bias. The court case was now impossible to ignore. James Carter sat on his porch, gazing at the house he and Angela had built together. The evening breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree in their front yard, and the distant laughter of neighborhood children filled the air. It had been weeks since the hearing where the truth about William Hawthorne and his discriminatory practices had been exposed. In that time, the fallout had been swift and far-reaching. Hawthorne had resigned from his firm in disgrace. His name had become synonymous with housing discrimination, and multiple Black homeowners had come forward with their own horror stories. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, had launched an investigation into not just his actions, but into broader systemic appraisal disparities across the country. For James, justice had been served, not just for himself, but for all the families who had been quietly robbed of their wealth for generations. The sound of the screen door creaking open pulled him from his thoughts. Angela stepped out, carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea. She handed one to him before settling into the chair beside him. "Marcus called," she said, taking a sip of her drink. "It's official. The settlement is finalized." James exhaled, feeling a weight lift from his chest. "It's over." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of relief and quiet triumph. "And not just for us. Because of our case, new policies are being pushed to regulate appraisers. Bias training, stricter oversight. It's actually happening." A small smile formed on James's lips. We started something bigger than us. Angela reached for his hand, squeezing it. And we got the home value we deserve. $250,000 more than that first appraisal. Can you believe it? James shook his head. We were almost cheated out of our future. Imagine how many others never even knew they were being robbed. Angela's expression darkened. That's what keeps me up at night. How many dreams were stolen? He turned to her, determination burning in his eyes. That's why we keep fighting. Angela tilted her head. Fighting how? James leaned forward. Marcus introduced me to some community organizers. They're working to push laws that protect Black homeowners from this kind of discrimination. I was thinking, maybe we should get involved. Angela studied him for a moment, then smiled. You mean you want to turn this fight into something permanent? Yeah. He nodded. We fought for ourselves. Now let's fight for everyone else. A proud smile spread across her face. You're serious about this? As serious as I was about marrying you, he said with a smirk. She laughed. Well, you did good with that one. James chuckled, taking a sip of his tea. The bitterness of their ordeal was slowly fading, replaced by the sweetness of a new beginning. Just then, their 10-year-old son, Jaden, ran onto the porch, a bright grin on his face. Mom, Dad, look what I made at school. He handed them a crayon drawing of a house, their house, with a sign in the front yard that read, "Home is priceless." James felt a lump in his throat. He ruffled Jaden's hair. That's the truth, son. Angela wiped a tear from her eye, nodding. That's the absolute truth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, James looked out at his home, knowing it was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of resilience, of justice won, and of a fight that had only just begun. Epilogue. Months later, James and Angela stood in front of a crowded town hall meeting, their names now recognized in the fight for housing equality. Their case had inspired national discussions, and thanks to their persistence, new policies were being drafted to hold appraisers accountable. Standing at the podium, James took a deep breath. We are here today because we refused to accept injustice, because we knew our worth, and because we believe no family should ever have to fight to be valued in their own home. Thunderous applause erupted. As he stepped down, Angela whispered, "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" James smiled. "Oh yeah. And I'm ready for it." Their battle had started with a single house, but it had ignited a movement. And as long as injustice existed, they would keep fighting because home was more than just a place. It was a right.